What's up everyone and welcome to another Warframe video. Topic of today's video, possibly my favourite frame to have come out in quite some time, and that is Wisp. To get hold of her you have to kill the roly-poly on Jupiter and hope that all 4 of her blueprints drop. You can find a guide to that in the description below. I've done a very easy to follow guide to be able to kill that very efficiently. Once you've got those done though, you are going to have to get 1200 of the new resource hexagon together to build her. It's quite a bit of a farm right now. Pretty much just take Necros to the new game mode on Jupiter and farm until you get enough to build her. It might take a while though because drop rates aren't particularly good right now. Before we move on to builds, let's take a real quick look at her abilities. They're super simple, none of them are particularly complex, and neither are any synergies that they have. First ability, Reservoirs. Wisp can choose between 3 towers to place down by tapping the cast button to switch and hold it to cast. You have a choice between Vitality, that buffs your hit points and gives you a heal over time, Haste, which buffs movement speed, attack speed on melee, and also fire rate on your guns, and Shock, which will apply an electric status to enemies in an area around you. That works really nice as some close range crowd control. All of the numbers can be boosted with strength, the duration of the buff with duration mods, and the range of the area of the reservoir by range mods. And that is actually basically it. It's an extremely simple ability that doesn't need much explanation. You can have 6 of these reservoirs active at any one time. Those 6 can be of any type, and casting a 7th will replace the first one you cast. And as of one of the hotfixes, the best change to that ability came. Larger buffs will override weaker ones, but you can use another Wisp's reservoirs to refresh the duration while keeping your larger buff running. Second ability is Will-O-Wisp, where she will send out a clone of herself while cloaking herself from enemy eyes. If you tap the cast key, she'll send out a slow moving clone. If you hold the cast key, you'll send out a quick moving one. With the slow moving one, if you tap the cast key again, you will teleport to the clone, and if you release the key on the fast moving one, you will instantly teleport to it. Once you've teleported to the clone, you'll become invincible for 3 seconds. Duration of the cloak and how long the clone goes for is affected by duration, although the invincibility phase is not. This ability is pretty sweet for, bypassing lasers in spy missions, getting the hell out of a bad situation in the middle of a fight, or you can even use it to open friendship doors solo in a public lobby. If you send your clone to one side, you press one button, teleport to the clone, press the next one. The leeway Warframe has, the sort of the little lag compensation thing it's got going on, that leeway between button pushes means you can actually do it solo, so no more slow teammates slowing you down. Third ability is Breach Surge. Wisp will radiate out a wave of energy. It's going to blind enemies that are in a line of sight of her. All aspects of this ability are affected by range, duration, and strength mods. Blunt enemies will not be opened up to finishers, however they will be vulnerable to stealth damage from melee weapons, as well as having an innate damage buff applied to them, which actually you can increase with the use of power strength mods. Both of those stack as well, so that you can have the stealth damage on top of the extra damage. So enemies that are affected by Breach Surge take a crazy amount of damage from melee weapons especially. In addition to this though, enemies that get damaged have a chance to release a spark which homes in on nearby enemies' heads. That will deal radiation damage based on your weapon damage. The sparks definitely seem to be capped to about 2 per second per enemy. However, if you have an enemy affected by Breach Surge, throw down a gas proc on them. It's going to spew out sparks as quickly as it can without you having to keep damaging them. Every single proc of the gas will actually have a chance of sending out a spark. So you basically can surge, spam gas procs on a group, and watch as the sparks murder them all. It's got a couple of interesting synergies though. If you use Breach Surge to teleport to a reservoir, it will do the surge when you arrive at the reservoir, except that it will double the range. Also, if you have your clone out from Will-O-Wisp, you will get a second surge from the clone, so you can boost your range that way too. You can even combine the clone and the reservoir synergy to double the range on your clone's surge too. And that leads us onto her 4th ability, Soul Gate. Wisp literally opens a portal to the sun. She will limit her movement but will unleash a huge beam of solar energy that goes for 40 meters with infinite punch through. Melts everything in front of her with pure radiation damage. It's a real simple ability. Press 4, aim at your enemy, enemies die. Hold your fire button to double your damage but also double your drain. Damage is affected by strength mods, drain affected by duration and efficiency because it's a channeled ability. It's got a couple of nice synergies though. Using Will-O-Wisp will cloak you and then you can use that to move around. It's very nice when your movement speed is limited to having your 4 active. It can also be buffed with reservoirs too. Having a vitality buff active will buff the damage of your soul gate by 25%. Shock will do exactly the same. And haste buff will make the beam proc corrosive procs. It's important to know though that it does not change the damage type from radiation to corrosive. It just adds corrosive procs. Wisp's passive is super simple too. When she's airborne, she is completely invisible, making her a frame that can truly use maneuverability as a key part of her survivability. So, with us knowing basically what her abilities do, that moves us on to her build, and well, I have 2. First builds focus around buffs from her reservoir, the damage buff from her breach surge, and also max damage on her soul gate in very short bursts. Going for a huge amount of power strength here, as well as including a double umbral mod setup. It's a build that relies on a lot of synergy and makes her utterly ridiculously tanky. With this, we're gaining an extra 1000 health, 100 hit points per second heal, which is more than a double grace would give you, and it is up all of the time, provided you keep your buff going. This, when combined with adaptation, means that she is super tanky and can take a hit, which is going to work amazingly well with our arcane choice, which is a double Guardian setup. The armor amounts from Guardian do stack, so that's 1200 additional armor, which will be up almost all of the time. So 1800 health, 100 hit points per second heal, and 1200 armor. Sounds good, right? Well, our efficiency isn't great, so combine this with Generic and energy orbs on the floor, you are going to have max energy quite a bit. This will allow you to cast Surge on high priority targets close to you, not only to blind, but also for the huge 6.96 times damage multiplier on them too. Combine that with the stealth damage, then you shred super high level enemies stupidly quick. Then you have Soul Gate, which you can only sustain for about 10 seconds or so, but 10,000 damage per second, 20,000 with the right buffs, even at high level, and that's before you actually use the left click. That becomes 40,000 damage, and that's going to shred through high level groups super quickly and super easily. You can switch out, Augur Secrets for Rage if you want, which is something I'm definitely considering for more, energy generation, but this is by far my favourite build for her. Second build is a bit more of an all-rounder, nowhere near as heavy on the strength, but we're going to put on some range on there for the Surge Blind and also for the Sparks. Problem is that because we're building for a bit more range, we lose room for duration and strength. This in turn hits our health, our heal, and our damage multiplier from Surge. It's definitely more of an all-round build and good if you're a fan of her Breach Surge, which I personally am not, and I'm going to explain that in a bit of a second. So what do I think of Wisp? Well, honestly, I love her. She is going to be my new main. Sorry, Nix, but you're going to have to move over. Let's start with visuals. She is absolutely incredible. Not only do we have this incredible custom idol and movement animation, which I absolutely adore, but she is also one of the cleanest and simplest looking frames out there. I'm a man of simple taste. I love things to be clean and uncomplicated. Some of the frames, and especially a lot of the deluxes we've been having, are a bit too busy for my liking, too much going on. So Wisp being as simple as she is, she looks amazing to me. And then you have the fact that she suits my playstyle down to the ground. I love big tanky frames. In the first build that I showed, you can tank a ridiculous amount. Not only that, but you have a constant heal. Like I say, over a double Grace's worth of active healing all of the time. Buffs your melee attack speed and fire rate of your weapons, which you can replace mods on your weapon with just using that buff. allowing you to mod for more straight up damage. You've got a close range stun from the shock buff, stealth multipliers and an insane damage buff from her 3, which allows you to push her super far into arbitrations and still not only tank but also shred. And even her 4 can do a ton of damage at high level if you set it up to do so. To me, she is a perfect frame. Now, I said I'd talk a little bit why I don't like building for her 3 specifically. I've seen people talking about it and going on about how strong it is, but honestly, outside of the simulacrum, it doesn't seem to work anywhere near as well. Except maybe if you're doing a super specific setup like a hallway camp or, you know, with a Vorban Vortex or something going on there. The line of sight detection in normal missions feels really wonky. The amount of times I've cast it and enemies that should be affected just aren't. And if you're using a weapon that insta-kills enemies that are going to be affected by your 3, you're never going to get any sparks. So for 90% of the game, you're going to be getting like no use out of the sparks whatsoever, unless you're deliberately bringing weapons that aren't going to insta-kill, so you can get more sparks from it. At the higher level though, honestly, you're much better off making use of the stealth multiplier and the damage multiplier to shred them, and hope for a few sparks to help you, than specifically modding for it. Personally, I just don't see this being as amazing as I'm seeing some people make out. It looks good in a simulacrum, don't get me wrong, but when you try and apply it to the game, it just doesn't work even close to as well as it seems. Not saying that Breach Surge is bad, because as an ability, it's not, but relying on those sparks is, in my opinion, not the strongest way to use it. You're better off like modding for the damage multiplier than the very inconsistent range. But with that said, Wisp is an incredible frame. The only downside I can think of is her 2 is extremely awkward to use. Holding to cast is super awkward, especially since the cast is just above your W key. And well, honestly, I complained about this with Nyx's hold to cast, and here we are again. And it's even worse and more awkward for controllers. I suspect we'll see this change at some point. But honestly, with Wisp, I'm completely amazed by how well she performs at both low and high level. And how much my build on her can also impact my weapon builds. Like, for example, not needing to use fire rate or attack speed mods, freeing up important mod space. I'm sure there's fun stuff you can do with her as well in the new parkour mods to make use of her cloaking, but I've not found a build that I like just yet. But for now, the first build is the one I absolutely adore and find to be the most effective. Let me know your feelings about her in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I shall catch you in the next one.